Wahiga. And according to the World Health Organization report in 2017, depression is one of the leading causes of suicide. That same report ranked Kenya at number 6 in Africa in terms of depression levels. What makes it even worse is that most people don't even know that they're depressed, and those who know do not seek medical attention because of the stigma that comes with it. But it's not all doom and gloom. There are solutions. It can be fixed. And that is the conversation we're having tonight, live from the Prestige Plaza along Ngong Road. Let me introduce my guest to you real quick, beginning from my immediate left, Aisha Ali. Thank you for making time. She's a writer and a mental health advocate as well. And a man who needs no introduction and wears many hats, is an MC, is a media consultant, an actor, Eddie Kimani. Thank you for coming in tonight. And followed by Dr. Catherine Mutisia, who is a psychiatrist. Thank you for making time for us tonight as well. And last but not least, Major Retired Wairimu Mukuria, a military psychologist. Thank you so much for coming in tonight. Dr. Catherine, I'll start with you. So how do I even know that I'm depressed?
Good question. Depression is quite common, and like you rightly said, many people might not realize that they are depressed. The people around you might notice that you're getting sad most of the time, most of the day, for a long period. You might lose interest in things you enjoyed previously. One might feel unworthy, feel excessively guilty over things which they might not be entirely responsible for. And it might also affect the appetite, sleep, and in severe cases, people might even start getting suicidal thoughts, wishing they were dead. And we usually would diagnose depression if it is affecting your social life or your work life, or if it's for a student, your studies.
Yeah. Eddie, you went through this. At what point did you realize that you needed to seek help?
Well, at the point that I started running away from my problems. I found myself in the South Coast. I don't know what I was doing there, but one thing led to another, and I kept on imagining that the farther away from what I thought were problems outside me that were affecting me, the easier it will be for me to deal with them. Unfortunately, it was not to be. All I was doing is just changing my locations. The problems were still the same. Yeah, so it happened that that particular time, and it had reached a point where I had even considered to, make a drastic decision and deal with it. Then how I thought was the right way of dealing with it was to just take my own life. But I'm very fortunate that I happened to meet a friend who took me through various experiences, especially after I found out what I was going through. It's a little bit of a funny story, because I ended up walking to this bakery in Ukunda, thinking that I'm taking a short break because I tried to figure out what was going on in my life. And he just started talking to me. I didn't know who he was. And I think that was the turnaround for me. I call it my Damascus moment, because immediately I shared almost my entire life and whatever I was going through. And the first time I was doing that through that period to somebody I did not know, it was his welcoming factor that actually made me open up. We ended up talking for more than 4 hours.
Yeah. And throughout this time, there was no family, friends to talk about? Family,
as I
friends
said,
as well?
I was running away from my problems.
Yeah.
So anything that I thought then was causing me problems was what I was running away from. And it was so easy to do that, because you always think you're right. You think you're doing the right thing, forgetting that you're hurting other people. More importantly, you're hurting yourself, and just being so convinced that you're dealing with it the best way you can. But unfortunately, it was not.
Okay.
And I guess the opening up and being honest with myself and meeting my friend Peter in Ukunda, and as I said, which became my Damascus moment, was what now made me realize where I was.
Yeah.
I did not know at what station I was. I knew they had problems, but how deep were they? I did not know. I thought I was dealing with them by being far away from them, which is one mistake we do when we are down on the ground.
Yeah.
we think running away from your problems is how you deal with your problems.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the point where I had my turnaround, and I didn't look back since then.
Okay.
And
Aisha,
yeah.
how has your experience been like dealing with depression as well?
So for me, it was more of a slow burn, because it's something that built up very slowly, and by the time I realized that it was happening, or this is what it was like, it had been happening for a while. So I felt like I'm just a sad person. That's my natural state. So I just, I'm just a sad person. This is how I feel. But then in 2015, a colleague committed suicide, and during that week I was going through a very difficult time myself, and as we were talking about it, and I felt it connected, that I feel that sometimes I might feel that way, and I could end up somewhere where I don't want to end up. And that was sort of my wake-up call. And it just turned out that during his funeral, I ran into a friend of mine who is a psychologist, and it was sort of, the lines just sort of connected. And then I was like, okay, so I've been feeling like this thing has triggered something out of me, and here is this person. So I just talked to her, and I told her I think I need help.
Yeah.
And she gave me a number for a psychologist, and that's when now my journey towards healing started.
All right. Major, where do the gaps lie when it comes to dealing with mental health from where you stand?
I think the gaps are multi-layered.
Yeah.
We have them at a national level from the laws that we enact. I think about 3 weeks ago there was a review of the Kenya Mental Health Act, and you would be surprised that some of the things that were being contributed was to compel different levels of government and for example NHIF to adapt mental illnesses
Yeah.
as part of what they need to cover for people to actually get well, because it is a part of us. It is a disease like any other, but there is so much stigma and moralization around it that even in our laws it is set apart. Let me even talk about how we talk about mental health or mental illness. I'll talk about the media, how we report cases that involve mental health. They are either sensational with bits and pieces of ridicule,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day they are meant to make people feel lighter by laughing at the situation. They give a snapshot of the incident. They don't give a history that helps people to connect the dots that somebody followed to come to the point where they reached, or what happened to a group of people. So the reporting is also a problem.
Yeah.
If we look at it from the educational point of view, when you look at our syllabus, it even tells children from class 6, now you're beginning to develop your breasts, your pubic hair, but it doesn't say you are also going to start to be concerned about who you are, your self-esteem, your self-image. So there's also a gap in education. How are we educating our children to be self-aware,
Yeah.
to begin to grow their mental intelligence?
Yeah.
How are we preparing them to become mentally resilient as well?
Okay.
And that can't be done when the conversation is not being had, or when people present themselves in a vulnerable way. We tell them, don't cry, man up, that sort of thing. And of course we have to come to the religious bit, where, to be honest, there is a lot of mental illness that is being incubated in our religious settings. I think a big part of it has to do with the fact that people feel there's nowhere else they can get the help that they need.
All right.
And Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, he will help me. But of course we also have people in those settings who are not saying to people,
Yeah.
this is not normal. You
Okay.
need help from a mental health practitioner.
All right, we'll delve deeper into the gaps in just a bit, but right now I want to bring in Betty Cynthia. Your story is particularly very touching, but I'd just like to hear your experience when it comes to dealing with mental health. Just kindly stand and just tell us how you dealt with it and how it manifested.
My name is Betty Cynthia. I suffer from bipolar, which is a mood disorder, which is characterized under mental illness. I was diagnosed with bipolar after I tried suicide not once, not twice, but 6 times. The first time I take 30 pills, I don't die, get frustrated. I take 25 more pills, I don't die, I just get dizzy and I wake up, get to school. I was 18, it was last year, and I wake up, get to school, everything is normal. I did further research, took stronger pills. I took 10 cetirizines and I blacked out, and then I was rushed to hospital. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I had a reason to die now since I had an actual disease, so my eulogy wouldn't be that plain. It would have something that she died of this. So the 4th attempt was a mixture of so many drugs. I will find Panadol across the way, I will take them. I will find Piriton along the way, I will take them. Whatever the number, I will just take them. So the 5th attempt, I was put under antidepressants because bipolar is a mental illness that requires therapy, that requires medicine in itself. So I was put under antidepressants. So the 5th attempt, I accumulated all these antidepressants and I took them. And before that, I had already written my eulogy, I had already planned my funeral, I had already planned what I'll wear, the type of makeup which will be put on. I had planned everything.
Betty, what triggered this entire attempt 6 times?
The beauty about my story is that I was okay. Nothing triggered me. I felt frustrated. I felt beaten to the ground, but that was just a symptom of the mental disorder that I had. So suicide at times is not a feeling. At times it can be a symptom of depression, and depression is not a feeling itself. It's a disease that requires medicine, that requires therapy. Just like HIV needs ARVs, just like cancer needs chemotherapy, mental illnesses require therapy and diseases.
Did you try to talk about it to anyone?
I did.
Parents?
I was afraid of people have put mental illness as seeking attention in quotes. So I was afraid of the stigma that would follow, that Betty is seeking attention. Betty is just trying to gather people around her to have a pity party for herself, because society has taught us that depression is a feeling of wanting attention. So I was afraid of talking about it.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I want to bring in a psychologist as well, Mercy Muinimusau, and just to talk to us about the pressure points and the trigger for that kind of feeling. Because Betty says she had no trigger at all. She just did not feel like she deserved to be here. Yeah.
Well, what I have picked when Betty is explaining, she said something that she felt very frustrated. So there were some underlying issues, and there was a reason why she was feeling frustrated. It just cannot come from nowhere unless she had a problem with her biochemistry, with the chemicals in her brain. All right? Because that can be a trigger. But if there wasn't anything wrong with her chemicals in the brain, then there was something that triggered it socially, environmentally. It could be the pressure. Since she was 18, she's just maybe in high school, the pressure that comes with it, the awaited national exams, the frustrations of feeling everybody is putting pressure on me. And the beauty of it is this: many a times you know you have a problem, but you actually don't know what the problem is. And so she required to sit down with a therapist and go through certain sessions which will make her understand what exactly triggered her bipolar. Because just like any other sickness or illness, there must be a cause. It may not be one particular cause like mosquito for malaria. It can be a combination of so many causes. So I feel that the triggers that causes most of these mental illnesses are many, and some of them are, like I'm saying, the social environmental, family which is not very supportive, a lot of academic pressure. People are not understanding her, and hey, she's just still a teenager at 18. All right, at the peak of her development as a human being.
You're a psychologist, so if I'm at home and I think there's something wrong, how do I get help? Do I call someone? Do I walk to my parents? What if they're not supportive? What happens?
There are many places that you can go to get help. If the young ones who are not able to afford and they don't want to tell their parents, which is not a right thing, you should be able to talk to your parents about it. The parents out there, they need to understand that depression is an illness like any other, and nobody calls it to come on themselves. So if a child says, "Mom, I'm very sad," listen to that child and take care of them. There are many places where somebody can go for help. You can start with therapy, which is counseling. There are many places, like we have a counseling center at Kilimani along Kirichwa Road. You can go to a money counseling center. You can go to Madare for evaluation. Madare is not only for those people who've gone cocoa. You know, going cocoa is losing it completely. You can go there for assessment. You can go to Dr. Muteti, right? Mutisia, and many other places. You can go to Chiromo Lane. You can go to Oasis Specialty Clinic along on Parklands. You can go to a money counseling center where the help will be given.
Is there an emergency dial line?
Yes, there is.
Or unless you have to walk there.
Yes, there is. You can call 1195. 1195, I know it's much to do with gender-based violence. It's a call line for that. But sometimes these patients, they present in a manner that it's an emergency and you do not know where to go. If you call them, they will link you up with the right people who can be able even to pick your patient from home and take that patient to the right facility.
All right, thank you. Let me bring in Priscilla here. Priscilla Angwenyi revealed that she lost her job because of depression. I would like to hear your story very briefly. Please, Dan.
Good evening. So my story is, I remember last year, prior to, pressure was so much at work, I couldn't handle it because I used to do marketing and I had targets to meet. Apparently, I started complaining of a headache. Little did I know this headache had started in 2015, and whatever that had triggered the headache was something else. So I remember having bad headaches, having had cold feet and cold hands, and I used to go to the hospital every time and again complaining of the same symptoms. They tried they tried to see if I had a bacterial infection. Apparently I didn't have. So I remember going to I remember from the 14th of June 2018, I was in a dark room. I locked myself in a dark room. I never wanted to see light. I never wanted to have food on my table. The only thing I would take was water. So every time somebody would just tell me something small, I would get agitated. So it reached 18th of June last year, and my caretaker came knocking, asking, "Priska, I've not seen you outside." So he asked me, "Priska, what are you carrying in your hand?" I told him it's a knife. So he asked me, "What are you doing with the knife?" I told him, "I want to die. There is no value." The next thing he did was he took me to the hospital, the nearby hospital. And apparently after being taken to that hospital, I tried explaining to the first doctor. The first doctor was not able to understand it. So the doctor referred me to another one. When the doctor came in the afternoon shift, I tried explaining it to her. At least this time round, I knew there was somebody who could understand me. So the doctor understood my situation.
All right.
Fast forward, I remember being admitted at Mater Hospital, and I started seeing a psychiatrist. When I got discharged, I went back to work, but my work life never became the same again. I remember not being able to perform very well. Since it was private sector, it reached a point up to last year, October, when I was told, "Priska, you know what? you are unable to work. Please resign. And that's what happened.
All right.
So depression is real.
Thank you, Priska, for sharing that story. And Aisha, you've been dealing with this a lot, especially in the workplace area. What more needs to be done? You've heard her story. She was going through something. Do you even reveal it to your bosses, especially if it's in a work situation? When you say you have a mental illness, is it even advisable to do that?
I feel like there are some places where they take consideration about mental health, but a lot of employers don't. We have a culture of formalizing the work environment and then the separation from life from work, whereas we spend a lot more of our time in the office than we do doing other things. So there's a formalization that limits the ability of people to actually talk about it, and then the stigma involved with this. So a lot of people are scared that if I tell people I have a mental illness, I'll be stigmatized, or I won't be trusted anymore in the office, and I'll be taken as a liability. So then that can, influence me getting fired or something like that. Yeah. So a lot of people don't talk about it, but I feel like a lot of employers need to take it seriously, from providing it in the medical insurance that they provide. Make sure that people know that you can get mental health care using your medical insurance, and also the work environment, to make sure that it's a conducive place for healthy people to work. Yeah. It's a place where when somebody is going through such depression or other mental illnesses, it's taken seriously, and maybe they could work out something that will enable them to continue working while also seeking the help that they need. So there are many things that employers can do to make sure that people who deal with mental illnesses can feel safe enough to continue working, because everybody wants to work. Yeah. Everybody wants to give their best ability to their jobs, but sometimes you just can't, because you wake up in the morning and you have to negotiate with yourself to go to work, that I need to go to work, I need to do this job. So then you can't do that. But then, or you have a bad weekend where you've been in a deep funk the whole weekend, but by Sunday evening you have to put yourself together, because Monday morning you're expected in the office. Yeah. You can't say I can't come to work because I haven't been able to do anything the whole weekend. Yeah. So we need to have room for people to be allowed to feel this way, and then seek the help that they need, while also being given room to continue to work.
Yeah. And Eddie, I know you've been dealing with a lot of men about this. What is the feeling on the ground? What have you found out dealing with the men out there? Are they willing to talk about this? Is it something, are they safe enough to talk about it? Do people even want to talk about it to begin with?
Well, from the onset of the Engage video that I did, which is where it all started, the journey for me to try and reach out and share my experiences, because one of my convictions of why I did that Engage video was actually I was going to be very selfish if I was not going to share whatever I went through, and how I managed to get back on my feet, how I managed to embrace failure, how I managed to find strength in adversity. So for me, a lot of feedback from that gave me very, very clear indications that, and maybe the men will forgive me for saying this, but I think men, we are under siege.
Yeah.
As it is right now, in terms of just having so much pressure in dealing with the dynamics of life right now. I'm getting varied feedback. I'm getting a lot of people, men reaching out, and yes, there is a challenge. One of the underlying problems is that, fortunately, men, we don't talk, we don't share, we don't engage, and I think it comes about because of societal upbringing, how we've been brought up to understand that and believe that men are this solid rock human beings who can deal with whatever comes through. But from my experiences and what I'm seeing and the feedback I'm getting, the men, we have a very big challenge in terms of just getting out there and dealing with our emotions. We've been told we don't need to show our emotions as men. We need to deal with what comes our way. But the dynamics have changed. The world has taken another direction in how we are dealing with issues. And the underlying factors, again, as I said earlier, is just that we need to start talking. We need to start creating spaces that are safe for men to engage each other and start talking and be able to confidently and without any fear reach out and say, I need help.
Okay.
It's normal, and that's one thing I think men are facing right now. When you tell a man to go for therapy, they'd rather go for a different type of checkup as opposed to a mental checkup.
Yeah.
And that itself is a situation which is putting a lot of men under pressure. We end up self-medicating ourselves with either drugs or alcohol. I self-medicated myself with alcohol. I turned to alcohol to be able to deal with my issues, but I didn't think there were issues then. But these are some of the results that came out after realizing what I was doing wrong. And it's only until men come together, we create safe spaces for us to discuss and engage, that we'll be able to tell one another, you know what, whatever you're going through is normal. And whatever I went through, it was not special. I'm sure there are other men out there who are going through other tougher challenges that I went through. It's just that I stood up and talked.
Yeah.
But yes.
Can you identify the pressure points for you, the trigger points?
Sorry?
Can you identify the trigger points? What happened for you? What got you to that state?
Ego.
Yeah.
Lack of focus. Wrong decisions. Both relationship-wise, business-wise, work-wise. And also, the same thing that I mentioned. We've been brought up to believe that a man should not cry.
Yeah.
So we end up bottling in so much that at some point it will get to the break point and it will have to explode. And that's why sometimes there are those who are fortunate enough that they don't get to that break point, and they're fortunate to be survivors of depression.
Okay.
And unfortunately, there are those who get to the break point and they cross over to what they think is the best solution for them. So for me, it's a combination of many things. It can't be one thing. It's a combination of many things, and also wanting to be a hero.
Yeah.
You know, which again it's fed with many underlying issues, as I've mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah, not
All
wanting
right.
to be told, thinking you can deal with everything that comes your way.
Yeah.
And just trying to be
The
a
hero.
man.
All right. And from that conversation, let's take a quick break here on Monday Report, the Town Hall session, live from the Prestige Plaza right here on Ngong Road. When we come back, we'll talk about how it progresses, and then we'll also talk about the solutions following that. Stay with Monday Report.